Jake, it's so good to have you back in Austin.
Always great to be here.
Thanks so much for being on the show. So you used to be a TV guy who wrote novels as a sideline, and you're becoming a novelist who does a little TV.
No. The TV journalism is still my main passion. I still love going into work every day. The novels are fun. I might go back to nonfiction when it comes to books. I do miss that. But no, the broadcast journalism is still.
This is not a sign you're crying for help or something.
No.
This is actually get me off of television.
It's a nice escape from my day-to-day job, which is, I don't know if you've noticed, but the news is not all good.
Tough times. I agree.
It's a lot of bad news.
Well, we're gonna come back and talk about that. Look, I would say it's escapism for us also. I've now read all three of these books, and I will tell you that I found myself lost in the middle of a difficult day or at a tough moment at work. You turn to this book, it's really great. You have a natural flair for this. It's 3 books, but the reality is it's a series.
Yeah, well, it's about one family.
One family.
And their trip through the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s.
And that's the conceit. So the first book, Hellfire Club, was set in the 50s.
During the Joe McCarthy era, the Eisenhower years.
Second book is set in the 60s.
Yeah, the Rat Pack.
Rat Pack, you guys, by which I mean the Martyrs, your characters.
Family,
they're out on the West Coast at the direction of Robert Kennedy. It's a great book. People should read it. And have adventures out in California. And then this third book is set in the 70s.
It's their 2 kids who are in the second book. They're now in their 20s, and it's 1977, and it's the whole weird era of the 70s. You know, I initially was going to pass the 70s because this is the first one that I was alive for. I was 8 in the 70s.
You were born in 1969. I was born in 66. Just judging by myself, I don't remember a ton of the 70s.
Of what goes on in this book, I remember gas lines and Elvis dying. That's about it.
But you also had Jimmy Carter elected. You had a blackout in New York City.
I don't remember that, though.
Studio 54 opening. A lot of stuff happened.
Yeah, you might not be surprised that I was not hip to Studio 54 opening.
At that time, at age 7 or whatever.
And my parents were pretty good at keeping the entire Son of Sam serial killer thing away from me when they were making me watch Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers. But I will say, I was going to skip the era because I thought it was just kind of lame, because that's how it's portrayed. But it actually was a wild era. First of all, you have a nation, an entire country that is tremendously disillusioned with the government.
Post-Watergate.
Post-Watergate.
Another thing that happened in the 70s.
And post-Vietnam. The country is not trusting its leaders in a major way. I mean, that's how Jimmy Carter got elected. Barely. But because he said, I will not lie to you. And then there was just the rampant mistrust and just a whole bunch of weird things happening. It was the rise of tabloid journalism because of the Summer of Sam. The New York Post, the New York Daily News. Elvis dying. Evel Knievel is a major character in the book.
January of '77, Evel Knievel jumped the shark.
He literally jumps over a tank of sharks in Chicago. And I should note, this is like 8 months before Fonz jumps the shark on Happy Days, which is where the saying comes from.
The expression comes from, but in fact, the actual shark jumping happened first with Evel.
This is when everybody is trying to capitalize on Jaws, on the success of Jaws, which was a few years before. And Evel Knievel does it, and they import these poor lemon sharks from the coast of Florida. They're not man-eating sharks. They're they're barely alive at this point.
It's lame.
It's pretty lame.
It's pretty lame.
This is when Evel Knievel's career is really starting to fizzle. Anyway, one of the main characters in the book, there are 2 main characters, Ike and Lucy, the kids of the Martyrs, Charlie and Margaret, who are the main characters in the first 2 books. Ike is an AWOL Marine, disillusioned with the government.
20 years old.
20 years old.
We first meet him in Montana.
He is gone AWOL. He is working on Evel Knievel's pit crew.
That's the thing. Evel Knievel is a character in this book.
A pretty big one.
Significant.
I started getting comfortable with the idea of having real characters be major characters in the book. I did it a little bit in the first book. I had Joe McCarthy and Roy Cohn and Estes Kefauver as characters, and at first I was uncomfortable with it. In the second draft, I got a little bit more comfortable with it. In the second book, I just went all in, and I had Sinatra be a big character in it. And because if you're going to do it, just have fun with it, right? I mean, you can't have them doing things they would never do. It has to be believable. And then this one, a friend of mine pushed me to look more into Evel Knievel because his charm completely escaped me when I was a kid. He wasn't really an athlete, but he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, on the cover of Rolling Stone.
He's a phenomenon.
He was a phenomenon.